In 1996, Julie Baskin lived in Oklahoma City. Julie was born and grew up in the Arkansas town of Benton. She went to Oklahoma University, so she moved there. She worked at the golf club at the university. Julie was close to getting her bachelor's degree in dance. Julie wanted to be a dancer, and after she graduated from college, she wanted to open a dance school and teach kids how to dance. People said that Julie was well-liked at school and had a lot of friends. She also had a lot of skills. Hi, and welcome back to our channel. If you are new here, please consider subscribing, as it helps us motivate to create more intriguing content for you. Let's have a look at the cold cases that were solved with insane twists. On December 19, 1996, Julie and her friend Ryan James spent the night at his grandparents' house. Ryan and Julie worked at the golf club together. They went to a show after dinner. Also, they agreed to have lunch together the next day. Julie stayed with his grandparents until 10 p.m. when she left to go hang out with some of her other friends. At one of their houses, Julie and her friends played Monopoly and gave each other Christmas gifts. Julie said goodbye because the next day she was going back home. Her college term was about to end. Megan, who lives with her, was also there. Megan and Julie decided to stay up all night. Around 2 a.m., they left a friend's house and drove to a place called The Kettle. Just after 3 a.m., they went back to their apartment to get Megan's things. They left the flat again after a while, and at 4:30 a.m., they were on their way to the airport. It took them half an hour to get there. Julie took Megan to the airport at 5:30 a.m., and Megan watched Julie leave in her Red Eagle Summit. Julie lived in the Dublin West apartments, where many people heard a scared woman yelling. Someone in the area called 911 and told them what they had heard. The person said that his or her wife had heard a strange and horrible scream coming from the parking lot of the apartment complex. When the 911 operator asked what was wrong, the person said they did not want to go outside because they were scared. After a few hours, Ryan James showed up at Julie's house for their lunch date. No one could find Julie, and neither could her car. Then Ryan told her she had gone the wrong way. Julie's folks came to her room not long after that. They got in their car and drove from Arkansas to help Julie move back into her old house. Instead of Julie, they found police officers who said she had gone missing. Julie was lost for 12 hours before her body was found on the edge of a lake about 15 miles from her home. She was in water up to her hips and had her hands tied behind her back with shoelaces. Julie had already been shot, and it looked like she would die. She got a pressure wound when a bullet hit the back of her head. There were also signs that she hurt herself at the lake. Near where Julie's body was found, there were possible clues in the sand. There were 2 sets of tracks that went down to the lake, but only one set came back. The cops thought that the other set belonged to the person who shot Julie. After looking at the sketch and talking to Nike about it, it was decided that it fit a size 9 men's Nike running shoe, specifically a Nike Air 2 running shoe. About 20 feet away from Julie's body, police found a pink leotard with the letters JB on the label. She owned it. The leotard had male DNA on it, so it was put away and will be used again when DNA technology is better. An autopsy showed that a single .22 mm bullet killed Julie. Julie made a lot of friends when she went to college. The spy went to talk to as many of them as possible in the hopes that someone would know something useful. But it was not like that. Everyone liked Julie, and she had no bad breakups or anything negative. When the police went to Julie's place, it looked good. There were no signs that a fight was going on. They found Julie's car in an apartment building just 1 block from where she lived. The red sand on the car floor looked like the red sand where Julie's body was found on the beach. People who looked into it thought it was pretty strange. Why would someone take Julie away, kill her at the lake, and then drive her car back almost to where they took her? Regrettably, the car lacked any alien hairs, fibers, or prints. Also, nothing pointed to a fight. Julie's phone had been taken. The cops looked at her cell phone records to see if they could help. Reports say that someone called her cell phone twice after she had died. One was to ask about the weather, and the other was to a number that was not working at the time. Even though there were clues and a $70,000 prize, nothing big happened, and the case went cold for a while. Then, a man called the cops a month after Julie died. He said that the night Julie went missing, a car like hers pulled out in front of him, and he almost hit it. There was a lake nearby because he wanted to talk to the driver The witness followed Julie's car for about 5 miles. The driver kept looking at the witness in the rearview mirror and then quickly drove off. The witness quickly looked at the driver's face and then had to describe what he looked like to the police. This is a picture of the young guy who was driving Julie's car away from the lake. He could have been in college, and he could have been Hispanic. He was strong, and his hair was long and black. The merged sketch kept showing up in the Oklahoma news. Everyone did not know much about him. For 4.5 years, nothing happened about the case. A woman in jail in Oklahoma County wrote a letter to the police. She said that one of her old friends might have killed Julie. Dennis Sturmer was his name, and he was 23 years old. Sturmer worked in the building and had never done anything bad. But at the time of the crime, he lived only 4 blocks from Julie's apartment, and the composite sketch looked like him. Sturmer did not want to answer any questions or give a sample of his DNA. To get his DNA, the police had to get a court order. The DNA found on the leotard at the crime scene was very, very similar to his DNA. He was no longer seen as a chance because being very, very close is not the same as being the same. His brother was the only male cousin who was still alive. Surely this is him, right? It looked like the puzzle, which had been going on for 5 years, would be solved at last. But there was a problem. The DNA of his brother did not match. The case went cold again. They must have been sad that Julie's parents might not live long enough to see justice done. Investigators were sure that this would not happen, so they tried to get DNA samples from every guy Julie had ever met. There were more than 200 guys tested, but none of them matched. No one could seem to figure out what was happening. Anthony Castillo Sanchez was arrested for beating up his lover 6 years after Julie died. After the police caught Sanchez, he had to give them a sample of his DNA so they could test it. When detectives looked into Sanchez's past, they found some interesting things. He only lived 1 mile from Julie. Investigators looked at the notebook of one of Sanchez's friends for the month that Julie died. On one note, she said that Anthony bought her and himself a pair of Nike running shoes. Sanchez wore shoes with a size 9 on them. At the very least, it showed that Sanchez and the suspect wore the same brand and size of shoes. One of Anthony's old girlfriends had a cell phone number that was only 1 point different from the number that was called on Julie's phone after she died. Sanchez may have tried to remember his ex-girlfriend's phone number and tried to call her, but he got one number wrong. Sanchez and his father had a weird habit of shooting .22 caliber guns at the wall of the house they rented. Investigators took a bullet from the home. The bullet came from the gun that killed Julie. Only 6 companies made .22 gauge guns with bullets that fit into the right holes. In 2004, Anthony Sanchez's DNA was matched to the DNA of a man that was found on Julie's leotard. Sanchez did the act when he was only 18 years old. It is interesting to think about how quickly he would have been caught if he had called the right number from Julie's phone. In 2006, a court found Anthony Castillo Sanchez guilty. It was agreed that he would die because of what he had done. Sanchez was still fighting his sentence in March 2023. He said that it was his father, not him, who did something wrong. In April 2022, his father, Glenn Sanchez, killed himself and then told his partner that it was him the whole time. But the cops have already looked into the idea that the DNA might belong to Glenn Sanchez and found that it does not. According to court papers, the probability of the match being a mistake is stated as 1 in 200 quadrillion for Caucasians, 1 in 20 quintillion for African Americans, and 1 in 94 quadrillion for Southwest Hispanics. Anthony Sanchez's execution date is set for September 21, 2023. Laura Salmon. During the Civil War, the Battle of Stones River took place in the city of Murfreesboro, Tennessee. Everyone knew about this fight. In the last few years, Murfreesboro has changed a lot. Many people have come there because of Middle Tennessee State University. People still talk about what went wrong in 1984 with a college student in Murfreesboro. On May 31, 1984, on his way home from work, a farmer in Murfreesboro, Tennessee, saw something shocking. The farmer went over to see what was going on when he saw clothes in the field. When he did that, he could see that the clothes were on a girl's body. She only wore a bra, 2 pairs of pants, and a dark jacket to hide herself. One of the jacket's arms was around her neck. The first pair of jeans turned out to be hers, and the second pair was for guys. The police also found a pair of underwear in one of her hands. Her name was Laura Salmon, and she was 18 years old. She was born in Tennessee on October 6, 1965. Laura was going to college in the area at the time. She went to Middle Tennessee State University in Murfreesboro, Tennessee, and worked as a checker at Kroger while she was there. The investigation showed that whatever killed Laura was something that hit her head hard. The rocks near her body looked like they were what killed her. Blood on those rocks and other things showed that she had been hit in the head up to 10 times. During the investigation, the medical examiner also found that Laura had slept with someone in the 24 to 48 hours before she died. There were no accidents or other signs that it was not working for both sides. Men's pants that were on top of Laura's body were one of the most important signs for the police. The DNA on the jeans belonged to a man, but not the guy Laura was with at the time. It came from someone else instead. Most likely, this DNA came from the person who did it. Since DNA testing had just started, the cops were not able to do much more than store the DNA. Then, the agents worked on making a timeline of events because they thought it would help them figure out what had happened. Laura began her day by going to a Kroger shopping store where she worked. The store's records show that she left around 1 p.m. After that, she had to go to Middle Tennessee State University to check her grades and meet with some office staff. She also wanted to go swimming at her grandmother's house and at the university, but she never got there. Near a store, someone found Laura's car. Her dead body was found a long way away. In Laura's car, investigators did not find any DNA that did not belong to her, but they did find a hair that did not belong to her. It was kept in the same spot as the DNA proof from the clothes. The inspectors also found dirt in the wheel wells, which is also important. The FBI lab found that they all fit together and that it was likely that Laura's car was on the road near where the crime took place. This means that someone killed Laura and then drove her car back to where she worked. The tip only made the police think that the person who did it knew Laura. People who saw Laura the night before she died said she was at a bar nearby. People who saw Laura dancing said she was with a young man they did not know, but the police could not find him. Laura's body was found in an area that high school and college students called Lover's Lane. They went there to have parties, bonfires, and other things. Then, people started to think that Laura went to Lover's Lane with a guy she met at the bar when she got off work. There, Laura told a guy she did not know that she was not interested, and he killed her. Since the police did not know who the young guy was, they talked to David Kyle Gilley, who was Laura's high school boyfriend. He was known to be jealous, but there was a good reason why he did not go. His dad told the cops that David was home all day when Laura died, so he could not have killed her. Since he did not do it, he could not have done it. Investigators were about to give up when a woman in Nashville, Tennessee, called the police with a possible tip. She said that during the event, a man named John Taylor struck her. Taylor supposedly told her he would treat her the same way he treated Laura. Taylor told the cops that he did not hit the woman and that he had not talked to or done anything with Laura. Checking Taylor and Laura's pasts showed that they both went to the same college. The Olympus Athletic Club and Spa, where he worked out, was the same. Taylor and Laura went to the same events and house parties. Even more important, Taylor was close to the university on the day Laura died. Taylor hit his girlfriends and other women he was with a lot. All of this showed that he might be a suspect. The FBI experts were then asked to find a match between Taylor's hair and the foreign hair that had been found in Laura's car. The FBI told them that it looked like the hair they found in the car belonged to John Taylor. Someone caught another bad guy. At the time, looking for mitochondrial DNA in hair would take a long time. About 20% of the people could have had hair like that. Even though it looked like Taylor was going to jail, this was not enough proof. In this case, there would be a few more turns. Investigators found nothing that connected him to the crime scene or showed that he was with Laura that day. At the crime scene, police found men's jeans with a 36-inch inseam and a 30-inch waist. Taylor was short, so having good jeans would not have helped him. The investigators had no choice but to move on to other possible targets. They looked into more than 100 possible suspects over the years, but nothing came of it. At her grave, Laura's mother, Lauren Mackey, made a promise to her daughter. She told Laura that she would be good. Lorraine did not know how she could keep that word, but she thought it was the last thing she could do for Laura. Help finally came after many long years. Laura knew Dan Goodwin from college. A few nights before she died, he took her out. Dan asked if she wanted to go to the movies. She said yes, so on May 27, 1984, they saw The Natural with Robert Redford in the afternoon. Dan told Laura's mother at her funeral that he would help find the person who killed her daughter. Dan got a job as a writer at the Daily News Journal in Murfreesboro, Tennessee, after he finished college. He wrote about the cops in that book. In 1987, he wrote about some unresolved cases, including Laura's. Dan knew that being a cop was more important to him than writing about it. After a few years, Dan stopped being a reporter and started working for the cops. Laura Sammons was the first person he got a cold case about. Dan sent all of the proof back to the forensic lab so that it could be looked at. DNA testing had changed a lot, so new tests were necessary. Dan went after other leads while that was going on. Someone in high school wrote one of them. A student at Oakland High School talks about the Laura Sammons case in the year 2000. The student told everyone that in 1984, his father had killed a girl and thrown her body away. David Patterson was the boy's father. He had been in jail before for a serious crime. When Dan tried to talk to Patterson, he found out that Patterson had died. Someone shot him and killed him. Still, Dan chose to just go with the flow. They got their DNA from Patterson's children. The DNA was matched to the DNA of a man who had been at the scene of the crime. It did not add up, so he was taken off the list of possible culprits. Dan went back to John Taylor, who had been a possible suspect at first. His DNA did not match either. Dan also gave a piece of his DNA, in case you were asking. It was clear from the tests that Dan was not to blame. Dan then focused on one man who had gotten away during the first search. He was interested in the name David Gilley. David was Laura's boyfriend in high school. He was 1 year younger than her. The police did not believe him at first because his father told them something different. On the other hand, Dan discovered that a witness directly contradicted this story. On the day Laura's body was found, the witness saw David Gilley driving her car. She saw him not too far from the road to Laura. The witness said that David's face was blank and that he was just looking straight ahead. She knew who he was by looking at a group of pictures of him and by looking at Laura's car. Dan also saw that David often hurt other people. One of these people was Laura Sammons. When he was mad at her, he would sometimes grab her by the head and hit her against cars, school lockers, or anything else close by. He even hit her sometimes. He knocked out 2 of her front teeth at one point. David Gilley was ruled out of the first probe so quickly that Dan could not believe it. David was about 62 inches tall, so the men's shorts found at the crime scene would have fit him perfectly. Then, Dan asked Jerry Findlay to help him with the case. He looks into a crime to find out what happened. Jerry saw that tiny drops of blood were on the pants. It was a mess after a moderately fast hit. This kind of mess normally happens when a sharp object like a rock hits someone. Most of the blood was around the knee. This meant that the person who threw the rocks at Laura did so while he was on his knees. All of this shows the police that the person who killed Laura wore the pair of men's jeans. People already thought that Laura's blood was on the jeans, but DNA tests proved it. Dan then went to Florida to look for David Gilley. At that point, Gilley had been fired twice and was working for the Manitoba County Public Works Department. He had a record, which was not a big surprise. Gilley was arrested because he hit someone, tried to break into a house, and got into a fight with the police. When Dan asked Gilley what happened to Laura, he said again that he did not do it and was not to blame. In a strange change of events, Gilley did say that the pants probably belonged to him. When the police told him that they thought the owner of the jeans did it, he immediately called a lawyer. On May 31, 2000, the police got a sample of David Gilley's spit. Gilley killed Laura because his DNA was at the scene of the crime. After 16 years, David Gilley was at last caught. Dan did what he said he would do to help Laura's mom solve the case, and Laura's mom did what she said she would do to make sure justice was done. People said it was because they were jealous. Gilley thought that if he could not have Laura, no one else could. He did not like that she made new friends when she went to college while he was still in high school. Always, he was right behind her. Laura's mom tried to get Laura to get a protection order against Gilley, but Laura was too afraid. Investigators think that Gilley took Laura to the empty lover's lane and beat her over and over with rocks. Gilley took off his pants and left them at the scene of the crime when he saw that there was blood on them. He then took Laura's car to her place of work, where it would be found later. David Gilley went to court in September 2006. The defense said that the fact that another man's DNA was found at the scene of the crime showed that someone else was there. The judges never thought that any other DNA found at the scene of the crime was from the real killer. Gilley was found guilty of everything he was accused of, and he was given a life term. As we come to the end of this fascinating look at cold cases that were solved in crazy ways, we want to thank you from the bottom of our hearts for joining us on this exciting trip. We have spent a lot of time and energy trying to figure out the truth behind acts that are hard to understand. What do you think of these cases? Let us know in the comment section below. Also, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel.